Most people think brewing tea is just pouring hot water over leaves and waiting. That is exactly why so many cups of homemade tea turn out bitter, weak, cloudy, or strangely flat. Real Chinese-style tea brewing is not about dumping leaves into a mug and hoping for the best. It is about temperature, timing, water quality, and knowing exactly what each type of tea needs to open up properly. Chinese families have been perfecting these methods for generations, and the reason their tea tastes so much better is not magic. It is a technique. The good news is you do not need a fancy gaiwan or an expensive tea set. You can use a regular mug, a basic teapot, or whatever is already in your kitchen. But you do need to follow the right tricks. Today we are counting down 31 clever tea brewing tricks that will make your tea smoother, richer, and easier to make at home. And make sure you stay until the bonus at the end, because that one can give you fresh tasting tea in seconds anytime you want. Let us start with number 31. 31. Warm your teapot or cup first. Before you add any leaves, pour a small splash of hot water into your teapot or cup. Swirl it around, then pour it out. This works because cold ceramic or glass pulls heat away from your water the moment it touches it, which lowers your brewing temperature before the tea even starts steeping. A warm vessel keeps your water at the right temperature the whole time, so the leaves unfold properly instead of steeping in lukewarm water. Chinese tea masters call this waking up the pot, and they never skip it, even for a quick everyday cup. 30. Always start with fresh, cold water. Never reuse water that has already been boiled, and never use water straight from a hot water dispenser that has been sitting around. This works because water loses dissolved oxygen the longer it sits or reboils, and that oxygen is what carries aroma and brightness into your cup. Fresh cold water brought to a boil produces a noticeably more fragrant, livelier tea than tired, reheated water. 29. Match your water temperature to your tea type. Green and white teas want water around 175 degrees Fahrenheit. Oolong wants around 190. Black tea and pu'er want a full rolling boil near 212. This works because delicate teas scorch and turn bitter in boiling water, while heartier, fermented teas actually need that intense heat to release their full flavor. One water temperature does not fit every tea. 28. Rinse your leaves before the real steep. Pour hot water over your leaves. Let it sit for about 5 seconds. Then pour that water out completely before adding fresh water for your actual brew. This works because tightly rolled oolong and pu'er leaves are compressed and slightly dusty from processing. That quick rinse wakes the leaves up and washes away any surface residue, so your first real cup tastes clean instead of dull. 27. Use less tea than you think you need. A general Chinese guideline is about 1 teaspoon of loose leaf per 6 ounces of water for a normal steep, or noticeably more if you are doing short, traditional style brews. This works because overcrowding your pot with leaves makes tea steep unevenly and turn bitter fast, no matter how carefully you time it. Chinese tea masters treat leaf ratio as more important than steep time itself. 26. Steep for far less time than you assume. Most Western instructions say 3 to 5 minutes. Traditional Chinese brewing often uses 30 seconds to 1 minute per steep, especially for green and oolong teas. This works because Chinese tea leaves are meant to be steeped multiple times, and a long first steep burn burns through all the flavor at once, leaving nothing but bitterness for later cups. Short and repeated beats, long and single every time. 25. Never squeeze or press your tea leaves. Once your steep time is up, simply pour the liquid out and leave the leaves alone. This works because squeezing leaves forces out the bitter tannins that are normally trapped inside the leaf structure. Chinese tea culture treats the leaves gently on purpose, letting flavor release naturally instead of forcing it, which keeps every cup smooth instead of harsh. 24. Re-steep your leaves instead of throwing them away. Good quality loose leaf tea can typically be steeped 3 to 7 times, with each steep revealing a slightly different layer of flavor. This works because tea leaves release their compounds gradually, not all at once. Chinese grandmothers rarely brew a pot only once. They treat one batch of leaves as an entire afternoon of tea, not a single disposable cup. 23. Add a few extra seconds with every re-steep. Your second steep should run slightly longer than your first, and your third slightly longer than your second. This works because each round of leaves has less concentrated flavor remaining, so a longer steep compensates and keeps every cup tasting balanced instead of watery and weak by the third or fourth pour. 22. Do not judge a tea by its first step alone. Many Chinese tea drinkers consider the second or third steep to be the true peak of the tea, not the first. This works because the very first step is sometimes uneven while the leaves are still fully unfurling. Give your tea a few rounds before deciding whether you like it. 21. Use filtered or spring water instead of straight tap water. This works because tap water often carries chlorine and mineral flavors that clash with delicate tea aromas. Chinese tea ceremonies have always placed enormous importance on water quality, sometimes even more than on the tea leaves themselves, because water makes up over 99% of what is actually in your cup. 20. Choose the right teapot material for the right tea. Unglazed clay pots, often called yixing pots, work beautifully for oolong and pu'er, while porcelain or glass is better for green and white tea. This works because clay is porous and slowly absorbs flavor over time, which deepens dark teas but can muddy delicate ones. Porcelain stays neutral, letting lighter teas shine on their own. Chinese collectors sometimes own several small clay pots, each one dedicated to a single tea family, purely to protect that clean, defined flavor. 19. Choose loose leaf tea over tea bags whenever possible. This works Because loose leaves have room to expand and release their oils fully, while bagged tea is often crushed into tiny dust-like pieces that release flavor fast and bitter, then fade quickly. Chinese households have relied on loose-leaf tea for centuries, specifically because whole leaves simply brew better. 18. Watch for shrimp eye bubbles if you do not own a thermometer. As water heats, tiny bubbles the size of shrimp eyes appear first, followed by larger crab eye bubbles, and finally, a full rolling boil. This works because these bubble stages roughly correspond to specific temperature ranges. Traditional Chinese tea masters used this exact bubble watching method for centuries, long before kitchen thermometers ever existed. 17. Let your leaves rest between steeps instead of rushing straight into the next pour. Cover your pot and give the leaves about 10 to 15 seconds of quiet time before adding fresh water. This works because the residual heat lets trapped aromas continue developing inside the closed pot, which noticeably improves the smell and depth of your very next cup. 16. Never let brewed tea sit on the leaves. As soon as your steep time ends, pour every last drop out of the pot immediately. Do not let any liquid linger with the leaves. This works because any tea left sitting on wet leaves keeps extracting bitterness the entire time it sits there, even after you think the steep is technically finished. If you have made it this far, drop a comment and tell me which trick you are trying first tonight, because honestly, the tricks are about to get even more interesting from here. 15. Try the fairness pitcher trick for consistency. Pour your entire steeped batch into a separate small pitcher before serving. Then pour from that pitcher into cups. This works because the first tea out of a pot is always weaker than the last. So combining everything in a pitcher first guarantees every single cup and every single guest gets the exact same strength and flavor. 14. Smell your empty cup before drinking. After you finish a cup, lift it and breathe in the lingering aroma left behind in the empty vessel. This works because certain aroma compounds cling to porcelain longer than they last in the liquid itself. Chinese tea ceremonies treat this empty cup smelling ritual as one of the most telling signs of a truly high-quality tea. 13. Use rock sugar instead of regular white sugar for certain teas. A small piece of Chinese rock sugar dissolves slowly and adds a gentle, mellow sweetness rather than a sharp, sugary taste. This works because rock sugar is less refined and lower in intensity than table sugar, so it rounds out flavor instead of overpowering the natural character of the tea underneath it. 12. Cold brew your tea overnight in the refrigerator. Add loose leaves to cold water in a jar, cover it, and let it sit in the fridge for 8 to 12 hours. This works because cold water extracts flavor far more slowly and gently than hot water, pulling out sweetness and aroma while leaving behind most of the bitterness and astringency that heat usually brings along with it. 11. Understand that aged pu'er gets better with time, not worse. Properly stored pu'er tea can be kept for years, even decades, and many Chinese tea collectors specifically seek out older cakes. This works because the fermentation process inside pu'er continues slowly over time, mellowing harsh edges and developing deeper, earthier flavor, the same way a good wine matures in the cellar. 10. Store your tea away from light, air, moisture, and strong odors. Keep loose leaf tea in an airtight, opaque container away from your spice rack or coffee beans. This works because tea leaves are incredibly absorbent and will pull in surrounding smells within days, while light and air slowly break down the delicate oils responsible for aroma and flavor. 9. Clean your teapot with only hot water, never soap. Rinse your pot thoroughly after every use, but skip the dish soap entirely. This works because soap residue clings to porous surfaces and clay pots especially, and even a tiny trace can completely ruin the delicate taste of your next brew. Many Chinese tea drinkers consider a soap-free pot to be non-negotiable, and some families have never once washed their favorite pot with anything but hot water in decades of use. 8. Season a clay teapot by dedicating it to one single type of tea forever. Only ever brew oolong in an oolong pot. Only ever brew pu'er in a pu'er pot. This works because unglazed clay slowly absorbs the oils of whatever tea passes through it, and over years of use that seasoning actually improves and deepens the flavor of every single cup that follows. 7. Make tea eggs using your leftover brewed tea and leaves. Simmer hard-boiled eggs with cracked shells directly in strong black tea, soy sauce, and spices for an hour or more. This works because the cracks let the tea and seasoning seep into the egg white, creating the iconic marbled pattern and rich savory flavor found in Chinese tea houses and street stalls everywhere. 6. Pair your tea with the right food instead of drinking it completely on its own. Green tea pairs beautifully with light seafood, oolong complements roasted or fried foods, and pu'er cuts through rich, fatty dishes like dim sum. This works because tea contains natural compounds that either complement or clash with specific flavors, and the right pairing can genuinely transform how both the food and the tea taste together. Chinese restaurants have known this for centuries, which is exactly why pu'er almost always shows up alongside the richest, oiliest dishes on the menu. If you are enjoying these secrets, go ahead and subscribe right now, because the biggest tricks on this entire list are still coming up next. 5. Fix an oversteeped bitter cup instead of throwing it out. Simply pour in more hot water to dilute the concentration, and add a small spoon of honey or rock sugar if needed. This works because bitterness comes from over-concentrated tannins, and diluting the liquid mathematically reduces that concentration immediately, rescuing a cup that would otherwise feel completely wasted. 4. Reuse your spent tea leaves instead of throwing them straight into the trash. Cooled, used tea leaves can reduce puffiness under the eyes, deodorize your refrigerator or shoes, and even fertilize houseplants when scattered into the soil. This works because tea leaves still contain tannins, antioxidants, and nutrients even after brewing, and Chinese households have treated leftover leaves as genuinely useful rather than disposable for generations. 3. Try blooming or flowering tea for a stunning presentation. These are hand-tied bundles of tea leaves wrapped around dried flowers that slowly unfurl into a beautiful shape as they steep in a clear glass pot. This works because the visual reveal happens gradually in hot water, turning an ordinary cup of tea into a genuine centerpiece that guests will not stop talking about. 2. Brew a concentrated tea base for instant iced tea anytime. Steep your leaves at double strength, then pour that concentrate over ice to instantly cool and dilute it to the perfect strength. This works because pouring hot concentrated tea directly over ice chills it in seconds without ever watering it down into a weak, flavorless glass the way slowly cooled tea usually does. And here we are at number 1. Season a clay teapot for years until it can flavor water with no tea leaves at all. This is something older Chinese tea drinkers genuinely do, and it sounds impossible until you understand the science behind it. Use the exact same unglazed clay pot for the exact same tea every single day for years at a time, never washing it with soap, only ever rinsing it with hot water. This works because the porous clay slowly absorbs oils and flavor compounds from thousands of steeps over time until the pot itself becomes saturated with that tea's essence. Eventually, pouring plain hot water into a properly seasoned pot produces a faint but genuine cup of tea entirely from residue built up over years. Many Chinese families pass these seasoned pots down through generations, and a well-seasoned pot is considered more valuable than an expensive new one. It is not a trick you can rush. It is a trick built one cup at a time. Now here is the bonus trick that makes life easier every single day. Brew a large batch of strong tea, concentrate on the weekend, let it cool completely, then pour it into ice cube trays and freeze it. Whenever you want tea, drop a few concentrate cubes into a glass of cold or hot water and stir. This works because the concentrate is already fully extracted, so the cubes simply melt and release flavor instantly with zero steeping and zero waiting. Instead of brewing from scratch every time, you get a fresh-tasting cup in seconds, any hour of the day. If you tried any of these tricks, drop a comment below and tell me which one surprised you the most. And if you want more genius secrets from Chinese kitchens and tea houses, make sure you subscribe, because we have so much more coming that you do not want to miss.